everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, December 12th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a citizen advisory group to the City Council charged with making recommendations concerning land use plans, planning processes, and/or on matters of plan implementation. All regular meetings of the Planning and Zoning Commission are recorded for record retention and transcription. The following is the official agenda of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Discussion and commission action will be limited to those items on the agenda. Any citizen who wishes to address the commission shall first be recognized by the chair and shall give his or her name and address for the record. If a citizen wishes to read documentation of any sort to the commission, he or she shall first seek permission from the chair. Oral testimony may be restricted to no more than 3 minutes per person. Agenda item number 1 is our roll call and disclosure of conflict of interest, ex parte communication, and site visit. So Aislinn, if we could have you call the roll, and if each commissioner would please state their name, what area they're from, and anything they need to report.
Jared Burnt.
My name is Jared Burnt. I live up in the Highland area. I made a visit to agenda item number 3 today, and I have nothing to report.
Jack Moore.
My name's Jack Moore, and I live in the Old Town District. I did a site visit to agenda item number 3, and I have nothing else to report.
Dorothy Ricks.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Ricks. I live in the Alameda area. Got a cold. I too, agenda item 3, made a preliminary visit to the site, and I have nothing else to report either.
Julia Sanders.
My name is Julia Sanders. I live in the South Park area. I completed a site visit to agenda item 3 and have nothing further to report.
Sarah O'Connor.
My name is Sarah O'Connor. I live in the College neighborhood. I made a site visit to agenda item 3 and I have nothing else to report.
Rick Satterfield.
I'm Ryan Satterfield from the Highland area, and I also did a site visit on agenda item number 3 and have nothing else to report. Very good. Moving on to agenda item number 2, which is approval of minutes. We've reviewed the minutes. We discussed a few grammatical errors that were found in the minutes. But other than that, is there any conversation on the minutes? If not, I'd hear a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes as written with the changes and clarifications that were made in our prior meeting.
Second that motion.
Very good. It's been moved with a second. Aislinn, would you call the vote?
Sanders.
Yes.
Ricks.
Yes.
Burnt.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Satterfield.
Yes. Motion carries. Agenda item number 3, preliminary plat, City View subdivision. So Timothy J. Brown of JCAP LLC, represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, has submitted a preliminary plat application to subdivide 33.8 acres, more or less, into 58 residential lots located on the east end of East Elm Street and south of Homer Street, west of I-15. The property is located in residential low, residential estate, and residential commercial professional zoning districts. So if we could hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commission members. My name is Mitchell Greer. I'm with RMES at 600 East Oak here in Pocatello. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm representing TJ Brown. He's here if we need questions, but hopefully we can make it clear enough that we won't need to involve him here tonight. So I don't think there's too many people here other than maybe Ryan that remembers how many projects have been proposed through this development. I'll just bring up a little history. We've worked with a number of developments. The times are pretty good now, and so a lot of these developments that have died in the past are coming back to life, and this is one of them. But this preliminary plat that was presented back in the olden days here, maybe 2008 time, was approved by the commission members. I think there was 60 some odd lots in it. One thing that I want to note, or want to make note of, which is why I brought this up, is this blue area is the disturbance of this piece, and you can see the entire the entire area was being disturbed to get what was proposed in this development. And so just a little history, I guess. I served on the Zoning Ordinance Review Committee. I think Ryan did back in the past as well. And one of the real kind of hot button items in the zoning ordinance when it got revised was hillside developments. And one of the tools and the mechanisms that they kind of put in place was clustering and things that could enable maybe the hillside development to happen without so much disturbance in the hillside setting itself. And this, to my knowledge, is really the only application of that has come forward. We've done it in very small instances, like 1 or 2 buildings or structures, but this is the first project that I'm aware of that we've actually pushed this clustering concept. So this is the hillside ordinance in effect for the first time, I think, since about 2008. So we're kind of seeing the results of that ordinance amendment. A little bit about the project. There's 52 lots. I think there's a little error in the staff report. There's 52 single-family lots, and there's 8 townhomes. So that kind of would give you a little bit of just a little bit of change from the staff report. So those 52 single-family lots, there's two actual pond lots in there, so those won't be occupied by homes. So total residential lots is 58 in the project. The acreage is 33.8 more or less. You can see this project as you drive on I-15. It's up by the water tank has recently got repainted to some of the nice scenes from Pocatello, and it extends along the freeway, fairly undeveloped, across from Farm Bureau over into this is Homer Street. So at the termination of Homer Street, it goes behind, I think the subdivision, I believe, was Sleigh Hill subdivision. I could actually look that up, but in that area, so it's Inglenook Heights. So sorry about that. And then kind of follows along some more steeper terrain here back into kind of the upper university area. And the project ties in right here to Lander Street and Elm Street. So to give you kind of a rough idea of where that project is. One of the unique things about the area in this particular parcel, and it was kind of a little bit of a hard thing for us to overcome, is all the different zonings that are within the project. So we have a big chunk of it is residential estates. We have some residential low density, and then we have some residential commercial professional kind of over near 18th Street. So we dealt with this before with another project last year that had split zoning. It kind of makes it a little hard to deal with sometimes. In this case, because we're proposing that clustering concept, we can fit our project within the confines of those zoning districts without the need for any change. Again, I just want to talk about kind of what this clustering means. So you can see here kind of the lot areas. These are the dimensions of the lots, or kind of this wide area. You can kind of see that kind of bounds what we're talking about. And we've got this high density, or not high density, but a townhouse area up off of Homer Street. So everything outside of those white lines, which is really the hillside, is all going to be left kind of in its natural state. So what we're doing again is clustering those units a little closer to the road. So, but thinking back to that drawing that I showed when I first started, that project I think had somewhere in the neighborhood of 150,000 yards of dirt to move around to accomplish what they were trying to do. This project is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 yards. So it's a dramatic decrease in what was originally proposed on this project. So, the clustering has some negative effects, and that is we have a few less lots in here than what was originally proposed, but we feel like, this is really the way the project should proceed. I don't want to kind of give the impression that we're not going to be doing grading in this area, because there is the need for some grading, and you can kind of see those slopes that kind of extend beyond the project. So at the end of these cul-de-sacs, you'll see some grading, and here as we kind of tie into Lander Street, we have to get into a pretty decent hillside to be able to accomplish those lots there. And it really is important to provide us that second access and connect into Lander Street. So eliminating this area really doesn't make sense from a design perspective. So the benefits kind of outweigh the negative of all that grading, I think. So I think we've reviewed the staff report. I think most of that staff report is fairly comprehensive. The staff has done a good job at analyzing the project and helping us fit it in and really do what we want to accomplish there. And I believe that we've worked very hard. This is not the first rendition. We've gone through many renditions to try to get to something that would work for everyone and the area. Some of the other, just a little discussion on the utilities. Has some there's some items in the staff report that cover utilities, and just to discuss a little bit about what's probably going to happen and likely going to happen. So we proposed the sewer coming down here and connecting in to an existing manhole that's behind Elm Street, and then we were going to rehab this line with a in situ type treatment to make that line a little bit better for the city. We felt like that would be a benefit for both of us and the city, but the city's kind of determined that line, they want to maybe long-term take a look at trying to get rid of it just because of a maintenance issue. And so we're going to have to route the sewer essentially all the way down to 17th and connect over in this location. So that's different than what we're showing in our proposal, but that's where we'll be actually connecting. So another issue that we've had with water, the project is basically within 2 water zones, and so we've been trying to find a way to economically service the project without having to break the bank, I guess, or make it so that it's not feasible to complete. But essentially what we've gotten to is we're going to have to run a water line down from the tank, and that's going to service this development. And it's going to be kind of essentially within its own zone in this area. And then this upper zone, to offset some of that additional cost, the fire department has agreed we're no longer going to run a fire hydrant all the way into this project. We're going to terminate with a fire hydrant at this location, and then we'll just have individual services that come in and feed that project. So we feel like that's a good solution for the water, for the sewer. The storm, we've kind of talked with staff a little bit, on a couple of different occasions about the storm. There's some concern about this pond and where it sits, and so I think we're going to try to change, the grade of this road a little bit and put this pond back in this location. This is where we originally had it located, and I think with our final documents, that pond will get moved into this location, and it's probably a better spot for it. The reason why we put it here is because this road sort of slopes down this way, and we're trying to capture as much water as we can. Moving it here, we can get most of the water in there, and there'll be a little section maybe that gets discharged, but we'll still meet all the storage requirements and things associated with the city ordinance as far as the volumes go. And another reason why it makes good sense to put it here is, there's a pretty major drainage that comes down through here. And I don't know if you guys ever seen that, but there's a fair amount of water that comes down Elm Street at times from some of those projects up above. And so what these ponds will do is, they'll provide some abatement to that issue over time. And so it's not going to be designed to take in a lot of additional water, but during events, these ponds will still function, and in a, they'll be designed for a very large event. So in a normal event, those ponds will function and help relieve those some of those water conditions that happen, downstream of this project that are already occurring as a result of the city water. So I think we've done a really good job. I think the staff has been very helpful in trying to help us get to where we need to be with this project. And I think we comply with the codes. I think if you analyze this project against the approval criteria, you will see that we do meet the requirements for approval. One thing that I almost forgot about is the slope analysis. I just want to address that quickly. So the slope analysis is here. Without getting into a great amount of detail, these shaded areas represent different slopes within the project. According to the slope ordinance that was adopted in 2008, you can disturb certain amounts or certain percentages of the slopes based on what the slopes are. And so we essentially are disturbing less than half of what would be allowed under a normal condition. So 10 acres versus 20 acres, or 9 versus 18, somewhere in there is about what it is. One thing I will note is that the staff put a requirement to put benching on some of these slopes, and so that will extend our slopes out beyond where we are now. So in a couple of these areas we'll end up with a bench, although we do have a bench near the bottom in most of those spots, but we'll probably end up with another bench in the middle of that, which will extend our slopes out, and our disturbance will get bigger than what we're depicting in the slope analysis. But you can see that we're about 50% of what can be disturbed, so we won't get beyond that allowable disturbance area with this project. I think, again, the densities are allowable under the zoning that we've proposed, or that is existing. We probably could get a few more units in there if we needed to, based on the zoning, but I think we're kind of at a nice balance there for where we are. And just, we didn't talk too much about the housing that's going to be there. These are not, East Bench houses. They're I don't want to say entry level, because that's probably not an accurate term anymore, but they're more moderate homes, essentially 2-car garage type housing product. And so that's, we think, a good fit for this area, and also will be very marketable in its current location. So that kind of gives you a rough idea. Some of the concerns as to how these houses would fit on those homes, or this grading plan, and the way we're proposing this is very similar to the Valid Diaberry project that was approved last year, and I think it works and will be a good, a very similar type of project here. So I ask that you review the information and approve the project as we presented, and if you have questions, I can answer those, hopefully.
Thank you, Mitch. So one question I have for you that we've kind of discussed a little bit on the ITD setback, and staff is asking, basically saying that ITD is requiring a 20-foot setback from the I-15 right-of-way, and we're basically showing on the lot that there's just about 12 feet there on that closest. What is your take on?
I think we tried to put it right around 10, but so I can say that we can comply with that setback if we have to. When we originally met with staff, we weren't, like, nobody knew. Like, we really haven't done a project that butts up against the freeway, honestly, and so nobody knew really what the requirement was. They mentioned, you know, we didn't know, I guess. So we put it where it is because it drops off over here on this side. So as we move to the west, if we slide it another 10 feet, it gets a little more problematic building on this last unit. But if we have to, we could slide it to the west and still make it fit. Hopefully that we can leave it where it is. I think we're pretty far away from their infrastructure now, and hopefully we won't need to do anything there. But if we do, we can't slide it.
So the buildings themselves, I mean, do you have an idea on the size and layout of the buildings as far as how much of the lot they fill, if they fill most
Yeah,
of
the
lot?
buildings are basically edge to edge here. So they're, you know, we're you can kind of see in blue with my white lines underneath there.
Mhm.
That's the building footprint. So they're fully encasing these lots, and those lots are, I think, 22 feet wide. I can't remember exactly what they were anymore, but 20 to 22 feet. So it's basically building is encompassing that entire area.
Okay.
So there's garage and a little bit of room down below, and that's it.
And I think the only, I guess, concern that there would be is you know, the city approving this and then ITD having to work with you, you know, and
Yeah, so I would just say approve it conditioned upon ITD approval. If we have to slide it 10 feet, we've already looked at it, we know that we can slide it and make it work. It just, again, if we can leave it, it would be better for us to leave it.
Sure.
So we will move it if we need to.
Okay. Very good. Are there other questions for Mitch? Julia?
So I'm not familiar with the comparable neighborhood that you were talking about. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be kind of comparable to these?
Like as far as, like, I'd say Breezy Point, you know, the stuff, again, Valadia Berry, it's above Center Street, it's above kind of the last project that Mr. Isley's doing. Maybe some that are in the Boulders, you know, somewhere over in that would be similar.
And then with the townhomes, I'm kind of envisioning something like the Hidden Valley Apartments or the townhomes on Swisher
Similar
Road.
to those. I have kind of a rendering, you know, more kind of a basic rendering if I can find it. Maybe I don't. Similar to that. I don't know that I don't think I have that available, but very similar to Hidden Valley. Probably not having the stairs on the outside and that kind of stuff would be more.
Pheasant Ridge?
Yeah, maybe kind of like Pheasant Ridge, similar to, yeah, I mean, just, it's going to be a home with a door on the front and that kind of stuff. It's not going to have a bunch of stairs on the outside. It'll be interior to the building. A garage, a door, you know, a row structure there. Individually owned, not, you know, they'll be on its each individual lot for sale.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Mitch. Matt, if we could have the staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commission members. Matthew Lewis, Senior Planner with the City. As noted, proposal before you calls for platting of 31.9 acres more or less into 50 single-family lots east of Slay Hill subdivision. An additional 1.87 acres more or less is to be developed into 8 townhome lots at the end of Ammon Street. As noted, the proposed subdivision encompasses a total then of 33.77 acres, and it has a number of different zoning districts, which include residential, commercial, professional, residential low density, and residential estate. In light of the steep slopes, the development requires adherence with Code Section 1705.140. As such, a preliminary slope analysis was provided with the plat application and is attached to the staff report. Based on the analysis provided, 13.12 acres has slopes ranging between 0 to 15% grade, of which 100% of the area may be disturbed. 7.85 acres has slopes between 15 and 25%, of which 50% or 3.925 acres may be disturbed. And then 8.46 acres has slopes ranging from 25 to 35%, of which 25% of that may be disturbed, which comes out to 2.15 acres. 4.34 acres has slopes of 35% or greater, of which 10% or 0.34 acres may be disturbed. Based on these calculations, 19.75 acres of the 33.77 acres may be disturbed. The applicant proposes to disturb 8.95 acres. The applicant proposes to set aside 14.65 acres or 43.3% of the 33.77 acres of the existing steep hillside, which many locals refer to as Slay Hill. The majority of the land will remain in its natural state, consisting mostly of crested wheatgrass and some sagebrush. Staff finds that this is acceptable based on Code Section 1705.1405D and E, preservation of the hilltop and existing vegetation. Based on Code Section 1705.140B3, minimum lot sizes may be waived by up to 50%, and building sites may be clustered. Based on this, and in light of topography, the applicant has opted to reduce minimum lot sizes in half for lots 31 through 33 and 39 through 43, Block 2. These lots are zoned residential estate, and so where a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet is normally required, 7,500 square feet is required. Lot 43 proposes the smallest square footage, and that would be 7,678 square feet. So all of the lots are within that 7,500 square feet. The townhome lots are being reduced in half from the required 6,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet in area. Lots 25 through 25, or 21 through 25, Block 2, are zoned residential low density, which normally requires a lot size of 7,500 square feet. However, in this case, the lots measure 7,350 square feet, which is permitted, again, based on Code Section 1705.140B3. Should be noted that in 2008, an application was submitted to vacate and abandon the public's interest in 2.36 acres of right-of-way and slope easement. Said easement provided access to the water tank near I-15. The Pocatello City Council approved the request with the condition as follows: an ordinance for the vacation and conveyance of the public's interests in the subject property shall be prepared but shall not be recorded until the complete and final plat for then East Valley subdivision, which shall include provisions for right-of-way and utility easement to replace those being vacated, is approved for recording by the City Council and engineer. That, in talking with legal, that ordinance is all ready to go with any final plat is within this property. This being the case, an access easement at least 30 feet in width shall be provided from the end of East Elm Street to the city water tank property. Vacation shall also be recorded as part of the final plat. East Lander will be extended north and then east, a total of approximately 1,565 square feet, where it will terminate at a hammerhead turnaround. An access easement will be provided at the end of East Lander, extending to the water tank. East Elm Street will be extended 550 feet east, more or less, where it will end in a hammerhead turnaround. Infrastructure such as water and sewer will be provided, meeting all standards as set forth by Public Works. In addition to the aforementioned open space, 2 stormwater ponds covering approximately 0.7 or 64 acres are proposed. Engineering officials are requiring that Lot 9, Block 1, storm pond shall be fully engineered or relocated, and Mitch touched on that a little bit. Sounds like it might be relocated. Based on the application information provided, staff finds that the proposal is compliant with all applicable standards of City Code 1620.050, assuming the 5 conditions as noted in the staff report are met. Also, staff has provided optional motions for the commission that are provided in your staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and Merrill's here as well to answer any questions on infrastructure and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Are there questions for Matt?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, this is before you. Any discussion?
I do think it's nice to see that the applicant is only proposing to disturb a third of what they could be. That's nice.
How close to an interstate have you built?
We haven't done a lot of projects up against the interstate that I know of, that I can remember. Like, I honestly can't remember a project where we've kind of adjoined the interstate other than commercial, in a commercial setting. And, you know, a lot of those built very close, but I don't, this is the first application that I know of in my career that we've gotten close to the interstate with residential.
I was wondering what the noise density would be in that particular area. That would be
I don't know.
combined with slopes.
Yeah, there is some, there, you know, it sits up above the interstate, but it's, you know, I lived on Renee for a period of time, and that, you know, you could almost sit outside and feel the interstate going by.
Yeah.
So it's you know, it's hard to mitigate that. I did a lot of things, plantings and things trying to mitigate that, but it, you know, it is going to be by the interstate, and there's probably going to be some interstate noise. I know that people experience some even up in the Hidden Valley, or not Hidden Valley, but Tuscany Hills projects that come down off this ridge here. The interstate noise comes up this canyon, and you can hear it up in that area. So, you know, it's something that you have to deal with when you live along the interstate. I think you get used to it. You know, when I lived along the interstate, eventually I got used to it. A lot of the projects that are associated with interstate development now have to take into account that sound, and they put up sound barriers and stuff. You see those when you go to Salt Lake and stuff, but it's not done so much in our area, but down there it's done a little more frequently. But
Can you zoom in to the last house on Ammon on the end? Yes, zoom in on that one. I'm just curious to see how, because obviously the interstate came after that lot was platted, and so that right-of-way sits pretty close to that as well.
Yeah, this obviously was intended to continue at one time,
Mhm.
and this was the last lot. We clipped off that lot. So it just kind of left this little spot here that's developable now. And I did have that, Mr. Brown sent me that. This is kind of a rendering of what those homes would look like. So they're pretty nice. They're 4-bedroom, 2.5
Nice.
bath. It's a good plan, I think.
Ryan, would it be your suggestion that we come up with a number, distance between the freeway tonight, or do we?
My opinion is that we can kind of leave that up to them. As far as the city's concerned, there's nothing that is restrictive within city code on stuff. This is just a ITD thing, and so if they have qualms with it, then I don't know. From the sounds of it, though, I don't know that there's a whole lot that they can really push for either. And so I don't want to create a bigger mess than really what's necessary. And so my take would be is that, you know, we let them just work that out with them, but that we can approve it as it is. And if ITD feels like they need more, then they can work with them on doing that. And by the final plat stage, I would think they would have that figured out.
Good with that?
Yep. Any other discussion or a motion?
We definitely don't want to do something that's going to, create an issue for ITD or anything there. We want to be good neighbors, even though the interstate is our neighbor. We still want to be good neighbors with them. So.
Very good.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary plat application.
I second that motion.
Okay, discussion on the motion. My only question would be, number one, we probably need to have conditions involved in that recommendation. Number two, do we want to address, because one of the conditions states ITD setback 20 feet from I-15 right away. If we want to clarify that any further, I'm just saying as far as the city's concerned, we would leave it up to the developer and ITD to work through that. Those are the questions I have about the motion.
I would approve it with the condition that we leave that up to the developer and ITD to decide.
Okay. And with the other staff conditions.
And
as
with the
well.
other staff conditions as
Very
well.
good. All right. Do you follow?
I second it.
Excellent. Okay. So we now have a motion and a second. Aislinn, would you call the vote?
O'Connor,
Yes.
Burnt,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Ricks,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Satterfield.
Yes, motion carries. That concludes our business for the evening. Thank you for coming.
I was surprised that the